why do we sincerely expect Abuja or the federal government to fix everything? From subjects or questions about boreholes in villages to schools in towns, even culverts in streets across different wards and local governments and localities. We always expect the federal government, but the truth is they cannot do it all. And I do not think that there is any country that develops that way. When every problem, when every problem must climb up one ladder to the federal level, you know, for every issue, progress would really become slow. Um, the bottlenecks that has to do with bureaucracy will multiply. It's going to be expensive. It really will be frustrating, and there will be a lot of gaps in the course of doing things that way. That's the truth. And that's where decentralization comes in. A big word that simply means moving power and decisions closer to the people. My dear friends, welcome again to another episode on the Diary of a Patriot. I remain Ajibola Oladiipo, and here you know that we break down politics, governance, and leadership in ways that make sense to your everyday life. And I'm particularly doing this from my perspective, from my lens and how I see things. This is a diary, an open diary. So you know what? Sit back and let's dive in to the diary of a patriot. So the question of what decentralization really means must come up. And in simple terms, I think decentralization is about who decides and who delivers. Who decides and who delivers. Who gets to decide concerning different subject that has to do with public life. So instead of one central government firing in Abuja, for instance, deciding everything about the nooks and crannies of Nigeria, from which roads to be built, from which roads is to be built, to what textbooks are to be printed, the number of pages. That's an issue. Smaller governments, such as the state and local governments, have a huge role and they get to decide for themselves. That's what decentralization in itself means. They don't have to wait for the federal government. I want you to think of this like a family. Imagine every single day when you want to eat, it's the father that decides every single meal, every single outfit, even the time everyone gets to sleep, the time you wake up, every single day of their lives. The honest truth is that house will become everyone in that house will be frustrated. Even the father will be frustrated because no one else has a say. He himself, it will be a burden to him, that decision making process. But that's what Nigeria feels like sometimes when we expect the federal government to manage the expectations and the dynamics of 774 local governments and a little over 200 million people. You know, and I think political scientists call this subsidiarity. It's a principle that says decisions should be made at the lowest level capable of handling them. So, for instance, I want to sharpen my pencil. Must your dad be the one to sharpen it for you? If you have a big brother, for instance, do you get what should I wear? Your socks. Your dad cannot decide for you all the time. So when schools, health centers, and roads, when it's run locally, you can be rest assured that decisions are faster, they're more relevant, and people can have a sense of ownership. There's no gap of the person that owns this project is far away. No, it doesn't. It doesn't get to happen with decentralization. The truth is that Nigeria inherited a highly centralized system even before the military era. And the military era in itself consolidated power and made sure that they stripped states and local governments of much of their fiscal and administrative autonomy. And I think that sort of affected our psyche a whole lot. And I think that legacy is one of the things that remains till date, particularly between 1966 and 78. Yes, and that's because at the end of the day, everyone waits for directive from Abuja. What is Abuja saying? Everybody wants to align with the center. Every sector waits for the center, waits for Abuja. Every fund passes through federal approval. Every project sample. All of these things, and that way, that's how reforms get trapped in bureaucracy. Let's make it real. The Universal Basic Education Commission, UBEC was created to ensure that education as a right is available to all. UBEC sends money for schools, but oftentimes states have to have counterpart funds before they can access it. Many of them cannot do that. And when they can't, what happens? Classrooms rot. And what happens to the funds? It's chilling in one bank, very cold, very chilled, dormant, not doing anything. Local governments, at local government level, what roads should we fix? What are health centers? What happens to waste collection systems? Many of those things are disjointed and tied down. Why? Because there's a state local government joint account. But then what do? Remember the previous episode, section 162 subsection 6 of 1999 constitution. All local government funds will pass through the states. What happens as a result of that? You have delays, you have leakages. Sometimes they outrightly hijack it in some cases. And what's going to happen? Over the years, nothing has happened, which shouldn't be the case anyways. So somehow centralization has weakened accountability, that ability to hold your local government chairman accountable. They have excuses. So when everything is decided, whether at the center, either at federal or state level, citizens cannot hold anyone directly responsible for failures that are local because it's federal governments. That's why it's very easy for states to point fingers, very easy for local governments to point fingers to states to point finger to the federal government. And that's how corruption hides behind distance. It's not me, it's you. It's not you, it's me. Those things. And over centralization, if there's anything that I think it does, particularly if you study our system and many other systems across the globe, it breeds inefficiency, and then it has a way of ensuring that people want to alienate the other the other sets of people. It's a source of big worry. Yes, it really is. But instead of dwelling on all of these problems, we try to stay on the solution side. A couple of countries that decentralize well, they tend to deliver better results, like locally. In India, there's a system that empowers village councils to to manage local schools and health centers. They have better results for it. In fact, in Nigeria, I've seen states where they tried having school governing boards, or where alumni of schools are managing their schools. You would see that those schools tend to stand out when compared to others. Why? Because some people are paying attention to it. Let each local government control its own development budget, for instance. Healthcare services are definitely going to improve. Okay, so let's say by the Northwest local government, for instance. Control your budget, all that has to do with healthcare, all that has to do with education, environment. Let's see what the numbers really are. In the United States, for instance, each state, what do? They control their education, they control their police, they control their health policies. What you would probably find federal government do is coordinate broader goals or shared interests. That's what it should be. In Indonesia, for instance, after the 1998 reforms, decentralization transferred 40% of the national budget to local governments. What was the resultant effect of that? It improved rural service delivery. That's what we want. Improved service delivery. We want our institutions to serve us better. Let's even bring it home. Lagos State, for instance, in trying to solve its waste problem, it still does have waste problem, but then it's set up Loma and PSP partnership in such a way that you have a decentralized waste collection system that's, in all honesty, I think works better than in most states. Actually, many states actually did copy Lagos when he had to, because Loma was first. And that's the reality. In Kaduna State, for instance, when the state decided to empower local education boards to fully like act as they should, we realized that school attendance rates went up. Ogun and Ekiti states, they decided to locally manage health schemes. And yeah, even in Oyo, yes, they decided to manage health schemes on their own, and I think it's even rivaling some of federal programs that has to do with health insurance. These are practical proof that decentralization is not just some theory. It's not something theoretical. It's the difference between having to wait forever and getting results at your fingertips. And what do we want? We want results. We want results. I want results. I want a Nigeria that works. I don't want to press too many buttons. We want life that is easier. We want simple and easy life to live. And that's why we must decentralize. And if you think about this from an economic standpoint, it promotes efficiency and accountability. If not decentralizing promotes inefficiency and you having to dodge and point fingers. So efficiency and accountability is on the other side. And I've seen arguments that when governments are closer to people, they can tailor services to local needs. And that's true because you are living within the context of these people's realities. Yes, you can see, you are there, you live there, you see the things that, for instance, imagine if you want me to determine what happens to Kotangora, determine what happens in Kotangora while I sit somewhere in Ekiti. My views will be distorted. And if we want better services, we want to create competition among subnational units like our states. If we really want that competition, then decentralize. Yes, this also has to do with financial or fiscal or fiscal issues as well. Let the person that work for the money spend the money. Right now, Nigeria's federal government takes about 50%, a little over, I think 52%, or there about 54 of all of national revenue, and then they leave 26% for states and 20% for local government. But where do we have majority of Nigerians live? Of course, again, that's because the federal government is taking more than it should actually be doing. Nigerians at the local level, that's where people are, and that's where governance is at the weakest. And that mismatch is one of the reasons why we're not experiencing the kind of development that we desire or that we deserve as a country. You know, there's something called polycentric governance. Many centers of decision making working together. No, you don't have to wait for a single command center. That's really how I think we can thrive. We cannot just say, "Oh, always wait for Abuja." No, we have so much as a country. Our diversity lines are quite enormous: ethnic, religious, regional. See, it's too much, and at all of those levels, we actually need active centers of governance, not just some overloaded center. Trust me, if from those levels we are coordinating things very well, we should make progress. Now we have development commissions in each of the geographic what's it called, geopolitical zones. Then let's leverage it. Let's see the results. Let's see what it does. So again, I always ask this question: why does this matter? Why does this matter? What exactly does it mean to you? It means if your local government chairman had real power and he had actual funds, your roads will be fixed faster. If it's not fixed faster, you can ask questions directly and you cannot hide under anybody's finger and say, oh, it's this person that is slowing this thing down. Your water board or water corporation wouldn't wait for federal bureaucracy because your state, the ministry under with the Ministry of Environment, the rural water supply and sanitation, everything is intact. Your children's school wouldn't have to depend on a memo from the federal government. Hospitals will not wait for 6 months for them to get approval to buy beds, except if they are tertiary institutions. Even if it's tertiary institution, that should not be the case. It should be decentralized. They don't have to wait that long. And I'm not even talking politics. This is really not about politics. This is about delivering service to people, making governance visible where people actually live. Everybody's not living in Abuja. How many percent, what's the percentage of Nigerians that even stay in the Federal Capital Territory or that stay in the capitals in each of our states? How many people stay in Ikeja, in Lagos? How many people stay in Humaya out of all of Abia? How many people in Abakaliki out of? So it's what's it called? We've had a lot of things centralized, but we really, 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 really need to fix it. Yes, we have to fix up. It's a contradiction. We're a federal republic. Yes, and a federation will draw its power, just like I explained in federalism. A federation will draw its power from the federating states. So let's give local governments real autonomy. Let states have real fiscal control. Let communities, CDAs and CDCs, let them have real voices. And when that is in place, of course, we can hear ourselves. Then we literally can touch the developments that we want. And I often hear people say reform is not possible. Nothing is impossible. Reform is possible. It requires constitutional courage, of course. It requires having to explain to the public. Yes. But then it's doable. It's something that we can do. That's the honest truth. Decentralization starts with citizens when they demand to be closer to the decisions that affect their lives. When you make people see that, oh, this is about you being actively involved in decisions that have to do with your life. And at the end of the day, it's win-win. If we want Nigeria's democracy strengthened, then we need to take power closer to the people. And here's the truth: Nigeria cannot move forward until we stop treating Abuja like the only government that matters. We have at least at 3 levels. We have the federal, state, and local governments. Those 3, they all matter. Yes, politics is local, development is also local, progress is local, and when people, when power is closer to the people, leaders have no choice but to be more accountable. I mean, I know where you live. Citizens would literally be emboldened and empowered to ask questions and ask the right persons. There's no let me my guard talk. No, it is you. You're in charge of this. Answer this question. And next time you hear decentralization, I don't think you should join them in thinking that it's some political jargon, so to speak. I want you to think of your community having the power to form or shape and decide its very own future. Those are my thoughts on decentralization, and this is me clocking in my my entry today on the Diary of a Patriot. My name remains Ajibola Oladiipo, and if today's episode made you think differently, or you learned something, or there's something that stood out, please share, comment, and please do all of that. And I also want you to remember that governance is too important for us to leave only to politicians. And that's one of the reasons why I want us to share this with people, so that, the more the merrier. The more people get involved, the more involved we are, the more active citizens we are, the stronger our democracy is, and the better our chances at having the Nigeria of our dreams. I'll see you in the next episode. But before then, stay engaged, stay hopeful, and stay patriotic. I'll see you next episode. Bye for now.